the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Just a year ago, leaders of Over the Rhine Community Housing and other homeless advocates cut the ribbon to open the Jimmy Heath House, the first of its kind in Cincinnati. The Jimmy Heath House provides permanent supportive housing for the homeless men and women who have not yet been able to beat their addictions. This shelter-first concept has been used successfully in other cities, including Columbus, since the 1990s. OTR Community Housing transformed 6 old buildings on Odeon Street in Over the Rhine into 25 dignified housing units. Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. Those who take risks to address tough issues like homelessness with innovative approaches need to be supported not only at ribbon cuttings, but over time. A year after the opening of the Jimmy Heath House, it is a good time to find out what's been learned through a year of experience. To discuss the progress at the house, I am joined this morning by Andy Hutzel, the Director of Housing Services at Over the Rhine Community Housing. Mr. Hutzel is responsible for the Jimmy Heath House, other supportive housing units, and Shelter Plus care efforts. Greg Pieples is with the Greater Cincinnati Behavioral Health Services. Mr. Pieples is responsible for the case management team at the Jimmy Heath House and the Paths to Recovery program, which we'll talk about as we go along. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Thanks so much.
Andy, a year. How have things gone in terms of occupation at the house? Have you been able to fill the units, the apartments, or people want it to move into this house?
Absolutely. It's been a great first year. It's certainly exceeded a lot of our expectations. We have 25 units at the Jimmy Heath House, as you mentioned. We were able to retain 22 of the first 25 tenants. A lot of folks are moving in with chronic medical conditions. Unfortunately, we did lose a couple of our tenants during the first year. They came in with severe bone cancer and other chronic medical conditions. But overall, it's just been a great first year.
So the reason when you say you lose tenants, it was mostly for those kinds of medical reasons as opposed to people saying, no, this just isn't right for me, and I'm going to go back out on the street.
Yeah, absolutely. People love the house. I mean, they've come in, they've really, some folks do take time to transition into the house after being on the streets for up to 30 years, we've heard. So folks just, they love the house and they love being part of the community.
Okay. And Greg, the concept of permanent supportive housing for homeless people as opposed to what most people and what the news usually focuses on, which is emergency housing. What's really going on here? What's the theory?
The concept behind it is housing first. The idea says that you take someone from the streets and instead of making them go through finishing programming, or go through a series of other treatment facilities, you put them directly into permanent housing. So it takes them quickly from the streets into housing. So you take the harm that the streets putting to a person and get them into a safe place that they're usually more willing to be involved in services.
So do they have to, even though they haven't become sober or clean when they move in, do they have to have a commitment to try to move in that direction?
We don't. The only thing we ask is that they're willing to work with us. They don't have to commit to sobriety that a lot of programs ask them to commit to. Again, the problem is a lot of folks aren't able to get into housing because of the barriers that actually put them on the streets. So we take away those barriers, allow them to come into housing, and they're a little more willing to work with us.
Andy, what's been your experience at the Jimmy Heath House this year as you've observed people who have moved in? What are some of their hopes as they move in, and then maybe 6 months into it, where do they find themselves? What's your observations about the dynamic inside the house?
Yeah, it's real interesting. I mean, folks are really skeptical that you selected them to be part of this house. You're going to give them permanent housing.
So you go out and you identify people.
Yeah, we have a vibrant selection committee. The Cincinnati Police are real active on our selection committee. Homeless outreach teams, the shelter case managers. So we get all those groups together. And
I want to just back up on that one. So often people think police are just out there enforcing laws. Actually, police want to deal with these kinds of underlying social problems because they know it doesn't solve any problems just to arrest people. So, okay, so people are identified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, for instance, there was a gentleman who spent a couple hundred bed nights at the drop-in center. He also spent probably the last 3 years on a camp on the riverbank. So the police and homeless outreach folks brought him to our attention and said this person could really, really use housing now. You know, he's just getting hurt out on the street in physical ways, emotional ways. So, you know, we brought him in. You know, he really took some time to transition into the house. He told us time and time again, I really think that this is a joke. This is a trick, and I think that you're going to put a notice under my door any day now that says this has really been a hoax, and now we're asking you to leave. So for somebody like that, I think he was very skeptical of why he's been invited to this program. But he's still in the program, doing great. He's part of Cincinnati Cooks now. So he's just really doing well.
And Cincinnati Cooks is a program at the Free Store Food Bank to help people learn skills so that they can get into the workforce.
That's right.
And begin to move that way. What are some of the array of services that Cincinnati Behavioral or other organizations can make available to people who move into the house?
Sure, we have a service team that's actually on site. We provide typical case management services, which involves medical care, hooking them up with medical care, mental health counseling and education, substance abuse counseling and education, vocational training, just coordination of services. At the house itself, we also have groups that run 5 days a week, ranging from AA groups to groups that are for someone that's not quite ready for AA, but kind of thinking about sobriety. So it's a very supportive idea. And you know, one of the positive things that we're seeing is that, again, we're not asking that folks have to do anything particular coming in, but we have 92% of our folks that have participated in some sort of programming at the house. So we're very proud of that.
Well, you know, I mean, there's a sort of a tough aspect of this, which is people don't have to be sober, they don't have to be clean when they move in. How do you handle, you know, people who have serious drinking problems or they have a drug problem? What about the legal issues? What about fights? What about, you know, just the management of the house itself?
Yeah, I think it's important to know that this is permanent supportive housing, and everyone has a lease like they do in the other 400 units that we manage, and folks are agreeing to certain house rules when they move into the project. So this is their apartment. They can come and go just like they can anywhere else in apartments around the city. What we do is really try to make the services very attractive, that we make, it's a beautiful facility and there's a beautiful common space. We bring in volunteers from Xavier University or area high schools. So we just try to engage them like we do folks, you know, who might be in the shelter system or in other supportive housing, and just try to make it as an enriched environment as we can.
Andy just mentioned other supportive housing. This idea of supportive housing, bringing people, sheltering people first. It's not just at the Jimmy Heath House. There are other units as well in the city. Is that right?
Correct. Our program started about 9 months prior to the Jimmy Heath House opening, and we were successful in housing 35 individuals in what we call scattered site. We use private landlords in the community anywhere in Hamilton County, and we provide support services in their apartments. So it's a similar concept, but in the Jimmy Heath House, everyone's obviously congregated in one area. It makes it easier to provide service. You see folks more often, and so the interaction and you build that relationship a lot quicker.
Well, you know, as I understand it, there's been a federal grant that's going to allow you to sort of evaluate over a 5-year period, whether scattered site or this sort of Jimmy Heath House where people are living together, which one works better?
Right.
Do I understand that right?
That's part of it. Part of one of the things we're going to look at is the combination of the services that we're providing for each. You know, is there a difference between the congregate site and those that live in the scattered site in the community? Right now, we're still working some of that out, but overall, what we're seeing is that we've been successful as far as folks remaining in housing. I think we're at 95% of our folks have remained in housing.
In both situations?
In our scattered site, it's about, for 1 year, it's about 96%. For the Jimmy Heath House, not all of our folks have made it that 1 year, but at 6-month mark, we're at about 95%.
So it's similar?
Yes.
How do you measure success here, besides people staying and getting off the street? What's success look like?
Yeah, I think for us, reduction in the alcohol use is a big one. I think the folks that we are using at Wright State University have kind of looked at when folks, prior to move in, and then at 6-month mark, how much have they reduced the amount of alcohol they're consuming? And it's been good. It's been about 50% reduction in the amount of alcohol that they used, 30 days prior to moving in versus at the 6-month mark. So that's good. It's not declaring victory that this is a great success yet, but it's certainly a good indication that we're moving in the right direction. And folks are engaging not only with the services, but also with each other and with volunteers in the community.
Well, that's what I was wondering. I was wondering if in a congregate situation, communal situation like the Jimmy Heath House, is one of the things you're looking at, do people support each other, and is there then, sort of you feel part of a bigger effort, and when you have a problem, there's people you can go to, and I just wonder what the hypotheses are. And
well, I can tell you that one thing I've been surprised about is how social the house is. A lot of these gentlemen know each other from the streets, from years of being on the streets, and the community setting, the idea of having this open area on the first floor at the Jimmy Heath House is utilized every day. We have a core group of guys that just come down and just want to be with each other. And again, we're seeing folks attend the groups and just being a part of programming that we have. So I've been surprised at the amount of interaction and communication that folks have had.
Yeah, and folks, they've planted a garden in the courtyard. They take care of the yard. They take out the trash. They go out on Friday mornings and pick up litter around the neighborhood. So I think they're really trying to give back. They finally have this sense that I have a stable place, and now it's time for me to give back.
Part of not only the community of the Jimmy Heath House, but also part of the community in a larger sense.
Absolutely.
We even started a basketball team in Over the Rhine Community Center, and members from the Jimmy Heath House were a part of that team. And we actually, to include the community, because it's important, we've worked with getting admission to the community centers for all of our residents. So getting involved in the community, keeping them busy kind of helps out with that too.
One of the things you talked about was the one man who is doing the training at Cincinnati Cooks. Mm-hmm. Are others being able to move into that direction and take steps towards employment?
We've had somebody go through I think BVR, but we've had a couple folks go through the Cat House through treatment. This is I think a model where it says we're not looking at a 30-day treatment program or 6 months. This is years. So we've been very surprised in our first year that 4 folks have gone through a Cat House program and come back. And
just so people understand, Cat House stands for
Center for Chemical and Addictions Treatment.
Yeah, I couldn't remember it either. That's why I didn't say it.
And it's in-house residential treatment for 30 days.
Okay. Now, the way I set this up was, and the way I thought I was reading the background materials, is that this is permanent supportive housing. People can literally be there as long as they want to. Is that what it is?
Absolutely.
It's not like a graduation out into another setting?
Yeah, studies show and other models show that, folks will eventually move out on their own after they, again, achieve some sobriety, achieve some stable income. Eventually the folks will move out on their own, but we're certainly not forcing folks. We're not putting a time limit to say, within 2 years we need you back out somewhere else.
And it's still the first year, so you're still into that.
Year.
From your point of view, is there something, I'm not sure I understand all the right questions, so is there something that really interests you, excites you in the treatment? You've been in the business for a long time, that this kind of supportive housing you think is really a breakthrough?
Well, I think it's new, and it's a little controversial at times, the fact that we don't ask for sobriety, but I think that what I've seen is that individuals really want to do well. And again, we've seen that reduction in drinking, just self-reported drinking in the first 6 months, which with our scattered site folks is maintained for the 1 year. But a lot of times people say that people on the streets want to be there. We don't see that. Our folks like their housing. They are appreciative of their housing. They want to stay in housing, whatever it takes. They talk about it all the time. What can I do? I want to work. I want to do this. But those, again, a lot of those barriers that led them to the streets or kept them on the streets keep them from working. So we try to, take care of those basic needs until they're ready and have the support services in place to move forward. So just people's willingness to do whatever it takes and being appreciative of what we give them.
Yeah.
I think, sorry.
And we're just about out of time, but go ahead.
But it's really a supplement to the existing continuum of services we have for homeless individuals. It's not necessarily a substitute for something, but it's just another tool
aspect
that we can use to get folks off the street.
Part of this larger continuum of care for the homeless, which is a great concept that's there, Kevin Finn.
Absolutely.
So thank you for your work. Thank you for being here this morning, and keep it up. I hope the next year goes well as well.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. After the break, a conversation with two of the leaders of a woman's effort to invest heavily in the community. Welcome back. Not-for-profits seek grants from federal and state agencies and from foundations. Each funding agency has its own mission, processes, and guidelines. A decade ago, a different approach emerged and grew into what is known as Impact 100. In the past 10 years, the women who make up Impact 100 have invested over $1.8 million in organizations throughout greater Cincinnati and northern Kentucky. To get a sense of who they have touched and their approach, here's a clip from a YouTube video about Impact 100.
They ask great questions. They ask very pointed questions, questions that I haven't been asked on a state or federal grant before.
They knew what they were doing. They came down to Tender Mercies, and they obviously had done their homework. They went through our audit with a fine-tooth comb.
We definitely would not be serving the number of youth and the quality of the service without this investment in our organization.
Without having the Impact 100 grant, we would have had to kind of scrounge around for various different resources to serve this untapped population.
I got to come to work and not have to stress about whether or not my equipment would be functioning again the next day.
I am joined now by Annemarie Henkel, the current president of Impact 100, and Jenny Berg, the immediate past president of Impact 100. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
This is a really interesting organization. Who makes this up? Because, okay, you're a not-for-profit and all that, those kinds of good things, but that doesn't explain it. Who makes up Impact 100?
Well, it's really a group of women who are interested in learning more about the community they live in and finding solutions to issues that all families face across the 10-county region we serve. It was started 10 years ago by Wendy Steele here in Cincinnati. She got a group of friends and colleagues together to collectively fund grants. Her background had been, she had served on various nonprofits, had a business background, and really saw the need that, yes, a $5,000 contribution, a $1,000 contribution made a difference, but really to make a transformational difference for some of these nonprofits, what a neat idea to collectively make a large grant. And so she gathered 100 women together, and that first year they had 123 women and made a grant of $123,000 to the Over the Rhine Dental Clinic.
So the idea here is that you have women who are contributing and you make big grants, you make impactful grants. Correct. Is the point.
Yes. Yeah, $100,000, as Annemarie said, is a lot of money. And the idea behind Wendy's idea was to really make a transformational difference in that agency, really provide for them an opportunity to push them to the next level and perhaps get something on their wish list that they've always wanted to do, and the $5,000 or $10,000 grants just couldn't push them there. So the $100,000 grants were able to help the nonprofits dream big, and this $100,000 can help fulfill that grant. And actually, we've surpassed 1.8. We're now at over $2 million with the grants that we awarded just this year.
Okay, you got to update your website.
Thanks for that reminder.
How many women are now involved in the effort?
We have over 340 women involved. We award this year we awarded $224,000 in the form of two $112,000 grants. And the
so
reason
you stick with that big grant concept.
We stick with it, and it's a discussion we have every year at the board level because it's hard to see our finalists come up there. There's usually 5 finalists. And this year we can only award 2 grants of $112,000. So it's hard to see those other 3 walk away without any money. But what we have found found is that we always tell them they're always winners, regardless of whether they come away with money, because somebody in that audience has been touched by their story. And there's been a lot of ripple effects by people in the audience then turning around and funding those additional agencies that didn't get our grant, but they did get grants from others as a result of being exposed to our membership.
What sort of things do you look for? What, I mean, obviously you're looking for something fairly big. It's not just we need a $5,000 set of computers and software type of thing. But how would you define the type of project, the type of investment that you're looking to make?
Well, we always, when new members come on board, and that all our members do all the grant reviews and the site visits, we tell them what makes a difference, what touches you, and it can be different each year, it's different for each person, and that's what makes the agency, we feel, our process so unique, because it's everybody bringing their own experiences. And the question we always say is, do you want to make a big impact for a small group of people, or do you want to make a small impact for impact for a larger group of people? And so that's really what it's all about, and everybody's definition of what an impact is. But that kind of goes back to our name of really making an impact in the community.
One of the things I know is, and Marcia Spaeth talked about that in the little clip when she was at Tender Mercies, but this is really hands-on. Your members come in and go through that organization and ask all kinds of questions and look at the books and all. This is a very thorough process and very hands-on process.
It's a very thorough process. We actually have almost 2 different committees that review those that we're going on a site visit for. We have the grant review committee members that choose to go down there and really see hands-on what that agency is about, which is a big part of the process because things look different on paper than they do in person. And then we have another group that's more financially astute, and they are looking at the financials with a fine-tooth comb, because we recognize not everybody understands that part, or not everybody wants to know that part of it. They want to just know what the agency does. I'm
aware of time, but I want to ask sort of you were mentioning that these are, your members have very personal commitments here to this and bring something to this. Do you have a favorite grant over the years that you are really happy that the organization?
Well, Tender Mercies is the one that touches my heart, because I was on the board of Tender Mercies. I was not an Impact member yet, but I learned about Impact 100 through being on the board of Tender Mercies. And so I always say it's even better to be on the receiving or the giving end than the receiving end, but I've been on both ends being on the board of Tender Mercies.
Okay, Tender Mercies, yeah, a great organization, which we've talked about on here a number of times, yes.
For me, actually, the Free Store Food Bank, I have 2 boys that are 8 and 10, and so that for me, that puts the charitable giving philanthropic spirit into force for them. They can see something, and we even had an event at our home and invited friends and family to pack Power Packs. So that's the one that I think has had the most impact on me.
Power Pack, great project.
Leadership Cincinnati.
Grew out of Leadership Cincinnati.
Exactly.
Jenny's in Leadership Cincinnati this year. Gratuitous plug. Okay. Thank you very much. I want to make sure people know how to get in touch with you. If you'd like to learn more, either because you would like to become active with Impact 100 as an investor, or you would like to learn more about the grant application process, go to the website of Impact, www.impact100.org. Thank you both, and thank you for making Newsmakers part of your Sunday morning. We close with a final thought from someone who has benefited from Impact 100. Have a good week.
Each day they came in, they would say to me, how are those wonderful women that kept this particular facility functioning? How are they? Tell them we all said thank you so much.